Hi everyone, Stepan here. I'm going to start covering the Versailles Chess Open that was played at the beginning of April. This was round 1 and I had no idea who I was going to be playing, obviously, in round 1, and I faced Anya Beber, whom I've faced before, about 3 or 4 years ago when she was really young and rated about 1200, I want to say. In this game, she was just over 1800 and I had the black pieces. And this game is, or was, very instructive for me. And I analyzed it extensively, both after the game and during the tournament and then when I got back home. So I hope it's going to be very instructive. If you play the Caro-Kann or the Semi-Slav or the Scandinavian or any E6, C6 structure with either color, this should be very instructive. She started with knight f3 and we ended up transposing to the quiet Slav, which can happen by a d4, d5 move order as well from the Queen's Gambit. In any case, we get a fairly normal position. She played e3, so now if she goes c4 and I go c6, it's just a quiet Slav. So I played bishop f5, and this is the best move because there's no way to punish the bishop from coming out because b7 isn't weak. c4, c6. Now queen b3 doesn't work, or cd, queen b3 doesn't work because there's queen c7 attacking the bishop on c1. Okay, so knight c3, which is the main move, e6, and in this position, white plays knight h4. That's the only move. You have to punish black for playing bishop f5, and basically white wins the bishop pair. So knight h4, bishop g6, takes, and the game goes on from here. There are alternatives to bishop g6, but I play bishop g6. In this position, though, instead of knight h4, she played bishop e2, and you could say that black has successfully equalized, and the way to equalize is to play h6. Now I just have a very solid structure with no bad pieces. In fact, I'm used to having this position with the bishop on c8, so a huge improvement. Okay, white castles. I continued bishop d6, just a normal London system position. The bishop's not on this diagonal, so e4, e5 cannot be played. And she played a3. Now black is better, because a3 is a clear waste of tempo, and b4 cannot be played so easily. I mean, you can play c5 and b4 and play for b5, but black has the e5 pawn break to smash through the center by the time white plays b5. And even if b5 is played, it's not the end of the world. Okay, so knight bd7, bishop d2, another fairly passive move. And you can see that black has to be slightly better here. Let's say the knights are equal, but I have better bishops, and that's just that slight advantage to black. Castles, rook c1. And in this position, I played knight e4. I mean, why not? I can just claim the good square in the center and continue with knight df6 if nothing is done. She ended up taking the knight, and I had a huge thing here. I couldn't decide whether to take with the pawn or with the bishop. I ended up taking with the bishop, and in these sort of reversed London system positions, sometimes taking with the pawn is very good because you get pressure on h2 and you provoke g3. So had I taken with the pawn, the knight would have probably gone to e1. I don't see another square. Okay, so knight e1. Now I can prevent b4. This was my plan. I was going to go a5 here, and I was expecting bishop c3, and now queen g5. Okay, eventually white's going to have to play f4. I don't know what white does here immediately, but let's say f4. I take, knight takes, queen e7, and e4 cannot be played. I can play knight f6, knight e4, and I just have a better structure. This seems very good. Or if, for example, queen d2, oh sorry, f4 cannot be played immediately because I take on e3. So let's say queen d2. And now, I don't know, bishop c7, f4 takes, knight takes, queen e7, maybe bishop d3. I think black's position is very comfortable, but I couldn't see a clear way forward. So on knight takes e4, I ended up taking with the bishop. Okay, she played bishop c3, And in this position, I played queen c7. I had a way to win a pawn. So taking on f3 and then taking on c4 wins a pawn, but I wasn't entirely happy with this. So bishop f3, dc4. And I was afraid of something like g3, just tucking the bishop away, defending h2. Let's say queen c7 developing, a4, a5, and am I really gonna keep the pawn? Can I really get away with b5 since the bishop puts so much pressure down this diagonal? Maybe. The engine says this is equal. I just didn't want to go in for this because e4 is going to happen, and then maybe e5 is going to happen. So I played queen c7, just targeting h2 straight away. She threw in cd5, and now I don't really have time for taking all of this because my knight's hanging. So I took ed5. Instead of cds, she should have played c5 here. And this would have been fine for her, because after bishop e7, it's clear that b4, b5 is happening, and I'm going to play bishop f6 and e5, but I may not have time for that. So if b4, a6, a4, bishop f6 have to support e5, then she can throw in knight d2, and wherever my bishop retreats, let's say h7 or f5 or g6, then she plays f4. And this is getting very scary. b5 is happening, e5 is not happening. So instead of bishop f6, maybe I can try f6, but it's still kind of risky. So this would have been better than cd5, but she played cd5. Okay, ed5, and now h3. And at some point, I should have gone a5. I should have gone a5 here. I should have gone a5 on the next move maybe, but I wanted to continue the attack. It seemed that there could be something here. So I played rook fe8. The idea is rook e6, rook g6, or rook e6, rook f6, putting pressure on the king side. She played knight d2, evicting the bishop, so bishop g6, and now bishop f3. And once again, a5. And I just want to prevent b4, but again I thought, okay, let's continue the attack. I mean, if she plays b4, b5, maybe I can get sufficient counterplay in the center and on the king side. So knight f6, which is okay. I mean, black at this point has a significant advantage. She played knight b3, and positionally you should go b6 here to prevent knight c5, but I was afraid of doing that. If I go b6 here, then c6 is weak, and maybe there will be some tricks with bishop d5 as well. And if there are, then c6 hangs. So I didn't really want to go b6. I was afraid of doing that. I was rather willing to allow knight c5. So I played queen e7, she played knight c5. Okay, I played rook ac8. Which is just a developing move. I plan to play b6 and c5 at some point. She played b4. I played bishop b8. And the idea behind bishop b8 is straightforward. I want to go queen c7 and checkmate. She played knight d3, trying to block with knight e5 in case I play queen c7. So I played knight e4. And knight e4, the idea is f6 if knight e5, and then if knight g4, I can go h5. She played rook e1, giving her king a square. I think that's the only reason for rook e1. And in this position, you can pause the video if you want to. I think this is very interesting, and I don't remember how long I'd spent in this position. But I was calculating pretty deeply, and I think I must have spent at least 10 minutes. What would you do here? I'm going to be playing in a tournament in about a week, and I've been using Chessbook to prepare my openings and to study the variations that I'm bad at. Recently, you might have seen some of my bad Thai Caro-Kann games, so I've been focusing on that. And I've also been working on my white repertoire because I'm going to be changing things up. Chessbook is a great way to do that. What you can do is basically import your repertoire. So let's say I want to import my white repertoire. I go to my white repertoire and I press import, and I just do what I do is I create a study in lichess with all the moves, all the variations, then I import it here, and then I get quizzed on it. And if you make a mistake regularly, you can focus on your mistakes. If you have a variation that you find tough to play, you can do that. And Chessbook is going to actually recommend the moves that people play. So it's going to be very easy to keep adding the moves that could happen. You're going to see percentages. You're going to see, let's say if I go to my biggest gap, you're going to see the moves that your opponent could choose from here. There's going to be an explanation. You're going to see how often it happens. You can also see the engine evaluation. You can select how to play from here, and then Chessbook is going to offer main plans for white. So it's not just learning variations, you can actually get advice on how to play them. And then once you've created your repertoire, you can practice those moves. You can focus on your entire repertoire, a specific variation, moves you often get wrong. I know which move this is, I don't want to show you. So you can focus on your biggest mistakes. What you can also do, if your repertoire is full, you can view your performance by opening. So if you mess up a certain opening, a lot of the time you're gonna see that feedback here. If you connect your lichess and chess.com accounts, you're gonna be able to see the mistakes you'd made in your games, and you'll also be able to play through model games in the openings you play. So Chessbook, if you're preparing for a tournament, or if you just like to get better at, well, chess, check out Chessbook. There's a link in the description. You can do a lot with the basic version, but with the premium version, which is $5 a month, you have unlimited moves that you can import. You can import multiple repertoires, so you can have 20 different repertoires to practice. And for me personally, honestly, it's been the most useful move I've discovered in the last year, and I've been using it for all of my tournament prep ever since. Okay, let's get back to the video. So I played Queen H4, and the idea behind Queen H4 was to try and put pressure on the H3 pawn. So for example, Bishop F5 and takes, and that would be devastating. Unfortunately, I really don't have enough. So perhaps I should have gone Queen C7. And on Queen C7, she has to defend. If she plays G3, I think that just fails. If G3, I think I can just take. If this is taken, it should be game over. I think Bishop G2 is the only move, and now we can just take on D3. And on Queen D3, Rook E6. I think when I play Rook F6, the king isn't getting out all that much. In fact, I don't know what move to suggest. The engine says Queen F5 is the best move, but okay, I mean, I just win the queen, Rook F6. So this would have been good. And on Queen C7, I think she has to go Knight F4. And now I go Bishop F5. And the idea is to push the knight away. So G3, G5. The knight goes to H5, and I don't want to take yet because I'm afraid of a check here. So let's say Queen D6 defending, Bishop G4 maybe, Bishop E6. I don't know. This seems very, very good for me. I'm threatening F5. So I should have gone Queen C7. Instead, as I said, I went Queen H4. She played Queen E2, and Black still has a dominant position. It's about -1. But my next move, or the move after my next move, was a mistake. Knight G5 is good. Big advantage to Black. And the threat's fairly simple, just take and take. So she needs to do something. She played Knight E5. And Knight E5 is not the best move, but it does deal with the issue. And here, I had a continuation that was simply crushing. Three of White's pieces are looking at G4. So a simple move like H5 would have basically ended the game. I mean, now I have too many threats. On a random move like Rook E1, let's say Rook E1, I just go Rook E6. And what does White do here? I mean, the engine says G3 is the best move. If a random move is played, then I can just go Rook F6, and the position's collapsing. I don't know what to say here. Let's just play another random move. I just go bishop e5, and on d5 I go rook f3, and it's going to be mate very soon. If the rook's taken, then queen h3, followed by knight f3. There are just too many pieces attacking. So on knight e5 I should have gone h5. But in this position I took on f3. And this is still fine. It's still okay. But my next move definitely gives away all of my advantage. I should have gone rook e6, just brought in another attacker into play. Instead I went bishop h5. And on bishop h5 I no longer have an advantage. I had visualized the endgame that happened in the game, and I figured it has to be much better for me. And I was completely wrong. And this is the instructive part for me. She has to play queen f5. That's... I don't think there's another move, because on queen g3 I take and go f6. So queen f5. And now bishop e5. That was my calculation, followed by bishop g6, where she has to do something like queen g4. I mean, if she goes to d7, I can probably just play queen e7. I think queen e7 should be enough for a small edge, but or even an equal position. But I was expecting queen g4. And this is the endgame I'd seen, and my evaluation was so off. I figured black has to have an advantage. In fact, this is close to equal, and white has a small advantage. So I played bishop d3. The idea is to prevent any advance with b5. She played bishop b2. And the problem with this position for me is that e4 is very easy to play. I played rook a8. She played rook cd1. Now I have to make a choice. I went to b5. I went to b5, and she played e4. I mean, this I have to take, d4, and now it's just dead even. In fact, I think it's easier to play for white. So rook takes e4, a5, have to break up the pawns, ba5, rook a5. The pawn on a3 isn't weak at all. It's extremely well defended, and my passed pawn on c5 isn't going anywhere. If I could choose, I'd take white because of f4, f5, e6, which is what ended up happening, and I had to defend. So rook f4 does nothing. That's a weird move. She should have gone f4. So c5, rook e4, bishop c6, rook e2, rook a4, f3, the rook goes back, rook ed2, rook ac8, I want to push my pawn, rook c1, bishop a4, defending the pawn, and now finally f4. And I'm struggling here. I knew that I couldn't be much worse, and I'm probably not going to lose, but white has a plan and I don't. I mean, my pawn isn't going anywhere. I can play c4, but so what? Rook c6, playing against f5, e6, f5, c4, rook e2, rook c7. I couldn't find the move. I don't really want to go b5 because I block in my own bishop. So, okay, bishop c3 blockading the pawn, rook d7 waiting, rook e4. Now I have to play b5, and finally e6. And it's not worse for me, once again, but I don't have a way to make progress. My pawns are completely blockaded and her pawns are mobile. And in this position I made a mistake. I should have gone rook d3. And after something like bishop b4, the engine gives bishop d1, which is interesting, but that's not a move that I would ever think of. So I don't know. I took fe6. Now white is better. fe6. My idea was, okay, let's just draw this. I don't want any complications, and I went rook d1 check, which is okay. It's very close to a draw. White should have a slight edge. Bishop takes, e7, and I just went king f7. She has to defend the pawn. Bishop b4, and the easiest way to draw was c3. This has to be taken, and then I just take on e7 and we agree to a draw. Instead of that, I tried to somehow keep playing for a win, because she's lower rated than me. It's round 1 of a tournament and I really don't want to start with a draw. I knew that c3 was equal, but I played g5 and I tried to keep some fighting chances on the board. The problem is that g5 is the losing move. Now it's not that easy to understand why, but it's one wasted tempo which eventually will allow the rook to come to the 4th rank, to the 5th rank, and pick up the b5 pawn. My bishop is sort of weirdly placed, and she played king f2 here. Instead, she should have gone rook d4, and let's say my bishop goes to c2, and then king f2, preventing this pawn from moving, c3, and bishop takes, rook takes, but king e2, and now, I don't know, bishop g6, king d1, c2 check, king c1, and I have no moves. The rook is coming to d5 and the rook is going to pick up the b5 pawn and I'm going to be dead lost. So her winning strategy should have been to put the rook on the 5th rank and just take the b5 pawn. And g5 did allow that. Instead of g5, instead of wasting a tempo and allowing king f2, king e2 and so on, I should have gone c3 straight away. g5, king f2 played, and in this position I realized, okay, I could actually be in trouble, so I just played c3. And at this point it's too late. So she took on c3 straight away, without thinking. Unfortunately for her, and fortunately for me, she missed the winning idea. The winning idea is just king e1, and it's extremely simple. I didn't even think of this. So I have to go to either c2 or b5. So let's say, or b3. So, sorry, or play c2. I can play c2. So c2, king d2, stopping the pawn. I have to wait, king g6, and now again, rook d4, rook d5. So rook d4, I don't know what to do, king f6, king c1, just safe move, blockading, and rook d5. And I don't know how to defend this. Bishop takes g4, king takes c2. Whatever I do, I'm going to lose. If bishop e2, then king c3. And I'm just getting destroyed. Luckily for me, again, she didn't see that. On c3, she just took on c3. I didn't see it either. And now it's a draw. Rook e7 and basically draw agreed. I don't know what to suggest. If she doesn't take, then I could even be better. So takes, and draw. So very bad game. Coming back to the critical position here after rook e1, queen c7 was a very obvious move, and I should have gone for queen c7, forcing knight f4, and then playing for g5. So g3, g5, knight h5, queen d6 covering f6, and then continuing the attack from there. And alternatively, I could have found h5, which is very, very strong. I did not think of that. It just covers the g4 square. It prevents all the tricks and all the exchanges. And if she, for example, plays knight here, knight takes, then fg, and my plan is just rook f8 and knight f3, or even rook f3. So, for example, bishop d2, rook f8, e4. I wonder if I should take with the rook here. So rook f3. There's bishop g5. Sorry. If she plays e4, then I have to go knight f3. But still, queen h3 and f3 is hanging. So yeah, I should have gone for that. Not a good game, not a good start to the tournament. But yeah, what can you do? It's always bad to play a lower-rated opponent in round 1 and not win. It kind of messes up your entire tournament, but you have to keep fighting. Okay, let me know what you think about the game, and stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.